President Trump came into office promising a vast extension of United States tariffs on foreign imports. Tariff, he said, is the most beautiful word in the English language. However, the rollout of this new protectionist plan has been anything but linear. We were to get tariffs on Canada and Mexico, and then they were delayed multiple times. We were to get quote unquote reciprocal tariffs on many allies of the US, and then those plans too were walked back. All of this has created quite a bit of uncertainty within the business community. Markets have stuttered, and we are seeing capital investments crater. The fact is that economic uncertainty of any kind causes a lot of problems. It makes it difficult for entrepreneurs to innovate, to make informed business decisions, and to ensure that their businesses will be secure going into the future. However, many of these stories are untold. The costs of uncertainty are what Frederick Bastiat might have called the unseen costs of regulatory adventurism. I'm David McGarry, the research director of the Taxpayers Protection Alliance, and this is another interview in the TPA Free Trade Center series. Today, I am joined by Kristin Rae, the founder and designer of Inspire Travel Luggage, a boutique brand. And Kristin today will talk to us about how uncertainty has affected her personal experience as an entrepreneur. Kristin, thank you so much for joining TPA's Free Trade Center today.
Thanks so much, David. I really appreciate the opportunity.
So, as we've talked about before through a few different conversations, your business had to make some pretty startling changes during the first Trump administration in reaction both to tariffs that were levied and also to the general climate of uncertainty. Can you walk us through how that happened?
Yeah, and I think we've talked before, and the most important thing to state is tariffs are taxes. They are taxes on imports. They are paid by the importer. They are not paid by the country of origin. They are paid to Customs and Border Patrol through a form that any supplier who is bringing anything over pays. Whether or not the business wants to absorb those costs or pass them on to consumers, they are taxes. 100%. This is not debatable. And so, to kind of get, that just out there at first, to then kind of break it down, these taxes on businesses stifle innovation in several ways. Businesses will pull back on, like you said, the capital expenditures. They'll reconfigure budgets. They may not hire employees that they were planning on doing. And it's the uncertainty that I think actually is worse because without a definitive tariff, most businesses could say, I might not have any risk here, but businesses that don't know are all pulling back. So I think that, there's definitely a chilling effect, when it comes to businesses, but also consumers. Consumers may say, hey, we need to tighten the budget. We're not going to take that trip this year. We're not going to purchase a new vehicle. And my parents were in that same situation. They were planning on purchasing a new SUV and decided to hold off because of the uncertainty. And so, those are real world examples that have the trickle down effect that we don't think about. If a family says they're not going to take a trip, they're not going to spend in a restaurant. They're not going to, the hotel tax is not going to go to the local municipality. But, for businesses, the impacts are even bigger. The capital expenditures, those don't go to businesses for equipment purchases. They don't hire employees. The local restaurant that might be down the street is not serving those people for lunch. And so we don't really see the full economic damage just yet. And I think that is something that businesses and consumers are pretty worried about.
Now, I think you bring up a very good point, and you're singing out of the TPA hymnal here. Protectionists will often say that tariffs are going to harm foreigners, which obviously isn't true because Americans are going to be the importers of record who are paying those tariffs and then subsequently passing those costs on to their customers who also are American. But tariffs are said to fall on or to target, say, these quote unquote globalist mega corporations, yada, 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 et cetera. However, as you're pointing out, the vast, or I shouldn't say the vast majority, many American businesses of all sizes rely on imports to get the goods that they need to make their own products. So you originally, your company originally sourced products from overseas. And
Yep.
then in reaction, again, as I said, both to the Trump administration, the first Trump administration's tariffs, but also the sheer climate of uncertainty that was created by the policies of tariff by tweet. You made some changes to your business model. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I mean, when the first round of tariffs came out, I was kind of surprised to see luggage on there. It's not really a matter of national security. It's not really an
I mean,
industry, right?
I'm sure we could find someone to say it is, but carry
Sure,
on.
definitely, right? And somewhat, we protectionists may say, these are to protect these domestic industries, like what we have here. There's not a lot of soft luggage manufacturers here. Just even like the tariffs, the automobile tariffs that were just announced, these plants that they want them to be built in are not built. Investors don't feel safe making those investments without kind of knowing what's happening. And so, for myself, onshoring my supply chain took years to find the adequate suppliers here in the States. And so, I had to go on a hiatus with this particular brand because it took so long. And this was all kind of happening during COVID as well. So, challenges brought upon there, and other macroeconomic forces can change things so quickly for businesses like myself, but also larger businesses as well. It takes a little bit of time to turn the ship.
Something turn the ships literally and metaphorically. Something you told me before really struck me, and that was that you couldn't be sure that after you had ordered a shipment of your inputs from overseas, you couldn't be sure that while they were in transit, you would not be hit with some sort of unpayable tariff,
Yeah.
some sort of crippling tariff that would completely hamstring your business's operations.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so this is again what I stated at first. These are taxes. They are paid by the importer of record. When you purchase something, just in general, there's shipping terms called free on board or CIF. Free on board means that supplier is taking it to the nearest port of entry. So, Hong Kong, Shanghai, that's when the person like me takes possession of it. I arrange for a freight forwarder to pick it up. I own it at that point. That's like the big distinction here, that they say, the country of origin. No, because you're taking possession of it over there. So, you kind of have everything as far as, your harmonized tariff code and what you will pay already attached to what, this freight forwarder understands is what you paid for this shipment. If you're 5 days from Long Beach and a tweet shows up and your category changes, you owe that. And if you don't pay it right away, you get fees and impound fees if you don't move it out of customs control. And so, it becomes incredibly risky, even in that, 28-day journey, if you don't know. And, someone like myself, I finance this, collection by collection. I budget out what I need for all of the different functions, marketing budget and, storage and whatnot. If all of a sudden an extra tariff is applied, I have to take it from somewhere. And so it's pretty unfortunate. And this is why I'm always so appreciative of you and our conversations, is that a lot of people like me, the small businesses, are not handed the microphone to say these are devastating. Larger businesses, sure, you've got, bigger numbers and bigger columns, but for someone like me, it's, how do I come up with another 15, 20 grand? Like, 4 days from now, I mean, that definitely puts the pressure.
And what's particularly rankling about a lot of this is that the benefits the tariffs provide are concentrated to specific industries, and the data show that those industries tend to be the ones with political connections. They tend to be the ones that donate to specific politicians, the
The
ones that
government
have
picking winners and losers, you know?
precisely, and it's not winners and losers based on merit. It's winners and losers based on who has an in, who is friends with the
Who has the most
politician,
influence?
who has the influence, who's contributed to politicians' campaigns, and then the people who we don't talk about, the forgotten man, as it were, are the small companies, the small businesses, the individual entrepreneurs running their brands out of their living rooms or out of small office spaces, who don't have those resources, who do not have those access, who are harmed. It's just grossly unfair, and as as I think a lot of the political wins a lot of the political wins in the sails of the Trump administration right now are anti-elitist, and I think a lot of that is quite justified because the U.S. federal government has put its fingers on the scale of the economy in a number of ways that again benefit sort of the companies with the power to influence federal policy. But what gets lost in the protectionist conversation and what is so incongruent about protectionism within the larger framework of the MAGA movement is that it harms the little guy. It harms the sort of person who is supposed to have access and free access to the American dream and the pursuit of happiness.
It's the protection of their fiefdom. You see, I mean, that's kind of where like the fix is in. The people who are saying these aren't going to have those effects are the people who can afford it the most. And I think that that's where you get this like conversation going, you know, between people like me and you, is where we can be honest about it, right? Like tariffs should be a nonpartisan issue. If we were actually using it for the purpose, tariffs just go into the general fund of the United States. They're not even earmarked for anything good, you know? So, what is all of this damage being done for? We're not using it to strengthen our borders. We're not actually doing anything to grow domestic manufacturing. You know, there's a lot of large companies out there, and we talk about innovation. Where does that come from? It comes from people like me who have ideas that used to be sitting on a couch or it was a little napkin sketch. You know, we're not nation building here with this particular policy. We are picking the winners and losers, and we're allowing this system to just be built. So, you know, if you misclassify something now, you don't even have an appeal process, right? But you can show up to a fundraiser at Mar-a-Lago maybe with $1 million in hand and advocate for you and your business specifically. There's something fundamentally wrong about that. Whether or not you think that the categories right now that are getting the pass deserve it, there should be an equal hearing process for that. And this discussion has never been honest. And I fault the Republicans, and I hate to make this a political battle, but it should have always been educating the public that tariffs are taxes. And this conversation wouldn't be egged on by people who thought, well, we're going to punish these countries because of other things they've done. It's cutting your nose off to spite your face kind of an activity. And, you know, for the United States right now, what we're doing, because we're not doing anything good with the tariffs, is we just have a new revenue source.
Well, I
And
think I
it's
think
getting out of control.
to make this bipartisan, the Democrats in recent years have not been very good on tariffs either. Joe
Biden
Biden,
did not rescind these.
he
I 100%
for the
fault
most
the
part, he continued the
administration.
Trump tariffs. He also extended the Trump tariffs in numerous ways. And now in the second Trump administration, tariffs are being even further extended. And suddenly Democrats have found their free trade scruples once again. But I want to go back to something you said, and that is that the costs of regulation generally are regressive. The sorts of businesses that are able to cope with regulatory burdens are the big ones, the incumbents, the established players who have the excess time and resources to pay for those compliance costs, to pay the lobbyists and the lawyers. But it's even worse than that, I think, because tariffs are doubly regressive, insofar as the costs of say inflated prices on produce, inflated prices on new cars resounding into the used car market, or the costs of more expensive energy, all of those fall heaviest on the sort of average American who is already struggling with the effects of inflation at this moment, who is really unequipped to pay for um, or unequipped to pay these higher costs that are caused by tariffs. And again, this isn't about punishing another country. This isn't about bringing multinational corporations to heel. At the end of the day, the effects of protectionism um, are falling hardest on working class families, middle class families. Again, the very types of people that the Trump administration says that it's championing, and it is profoundly incongruent with the larger economic message of prosperity that Trump was elected upon.
Absolutely. And I go back to something you mentioned. A lot of these larger corporations, the inventory that they have in the country right now, let's see, it's almost Easter. So things for Christmas, right? For Walmart and Target, they're already arriving, right? Like they're working ahead a 9, 12 month buy plan. They have the most resources to avoid, supply chain issues the most, So some of the inflation, the immediate inflation you see is corporate greed, because they haven't been hit by the tariffs on that stuff that they've had in the country for a long time. You saw immediately prices raise. Well, for a lot of those companies, that merchandise has been here and it was untariffed. So you're right, things are getting mixed in between inflation and tariffs, and there's this economic soup that's happening that is being fed to people that is just not, it's not truthful, it's not honest, it's not straightforward. And to be completely clear about it, it's incredibly harmful to the economy. You would think that there is someone in the administration that could be honest with the president, with his staff, and explain these principles. I think he's removed a lot of people close to him. Hopefully interviews like this, get through to people. They see, you know, there are real effects, and I don't think we've completely felt them yet. And that is really the scariest part of this.
Well, I think it's certainly true that the effects of regulation go on far longer than policymakers often anticipate. Whenever some sort of new burden is imposed, companies will start planning over a longer period of time than just the next couple months. And I think that's actually why you see a lot of immediate price increases in response to certain decisions. Because they have to protect their bottom lines from the
Answer
future
to
regulatory
shareholders.
costs. They have to protect their shareholders, protect their workers, and they have to hedge against these things. They have to hedge against the uncertainty as well. Um, it truly sort of turns us into a mess, or it creates a mess. And with tariffs specifically, tariffs get more tariffs. When protectionism is expanded, every time you see companies running to the federal government for exemptions, running to the federal government for more tariffs on their inputs. There was a whole saga around tin plate and metal manufacturing a couple years ago that illustrated this very well. All right, Kristin, thank you so much for joining us. This has been absolutely fantastic. We always appreciate your insights and your input, because it's true that small businesses simply get lost in the shuffle on a lot of these conversations. And we couldn't be more happy to promote these stories.
Thank you so much. I always appreciate it. And just really, truly thank you for handing the microphone to a small business like myself, who can just, share their experience and share their story. It's really impactful. Thank you so much, David.
And for anyone hoping to learn more about these issues, please visit protectingtaxpayers.org and go to our webpage for the Free Trade Center.